The storm swept into Galveston in the early morning hours of August 18, 1983, as a Category 3 hurricane. Our area woke up to a nightmare in Alicia, a storm that dumped about a foot of rain across Houston, packed winds of more than 100 miles per hour, and spawned more than 20 tornadoes. It's also blamed for the deaths of 21 people. Alicia quickly became the second most costly storm to hit the U.S., devastating Galveston and the greater Houston area. The storm left nearly 750,000 people without power, which took almost 2 weeks to restore in some areas. President Reagan declared 6 counties disaster areas, including Harris, Galveston, and Fort Bend. Hi there, I'm digital anchor Brandy Smith. In this KHU11 Rewind, we're looking back at Alicia's impact 40 years after the storm made landfall. And we begin the day before, August 17th, 1983, with this report from meteorologist Tom Seiler.
The number one question, let me go to the radar and I'll show you. The number one question people are asking is, how far across is this? Well, it's about 125 miles from east to west and about 75 miles from north to south. And the hurricane force winds probably cover a little area 25 by 40 miles. Let's go with one of our live eyes back to Galveston. I understand we're getting some more blowing debris down there. Do we have that signal up? Well, it is getting awfully dark also, but we understand the winds have really picked up down there. They were gusting to over 50 earlier. I would say by now they're certainly approaching 60 miles an hour, although the storm isn't moving much. Let me go to the latest satellite. Let's go to the satellite photo that cleared just a few moments ago, and it'll show the definitive eye of the hurricane. And again, we'll repeat what they expect to happen. Right now it's sitting there. The center wobbles a little bit from hour to hour, but it is basically dead in the water and spinning and also gaining energy. Now tonight they expect a west-northwestward movement to reassess itself and no more than 5 miles an hour. Traditionally, they would speed up as they approach the coast. Another question we've had, Amanda, it's over land. Why isn't it losing energy? Well, the center is still out in the Gulf. It's still gulping in a lot of moisture. Only a very small part of it is over land. As it makes landfall somewhere predicted between Palacios and Galveston, the friction of the earth will rob it of some of its energy and the moisture. So it will not move very rapidly, and that's why the potential is there for some heavy rain. Let's go back to the radar. Real time right now. We're on the close range. Now, earlier today, we taped on the 180-mile range the radar, and we're using 1 second per 15 minutes. This is on the 180-mile range. Now, it will not be all that dramatic because the storm stopped. You can certainly see the whirling, the cyclonic whirl of the storm, but again, there is no or very little forward movement. And this covered a time period from roughly 10 o'clock this morning until late this afternoon. So that's the way it looks. And now back to the radar one more time real quickly right now, and we'll show you on the 120 nautical mile range a storm with rain that's in South Houston. The heaviest rain is from Galveston out into the Gulf. It is not moving. The center of the eye is about 85 miles south-southeast of Galveston. The top winds 110 miles an hour.
Mere hours later, at 2 a.m., Alicia hit the western tip of Galveston Island with powerful winds and a 10-foot storm surge. The seawall held, but other buildings suffered significant damage. Here's Steve Smith anchoring on August 18th.
And early this morning, just before 2 o'clock, this big storm drew a bead on the Texas coast, just off the far west end of Galveston Island. Tonight, 15 hours after this storm came ashore, hundreds of thousands of people still have no electricity and can't even see this report. 3 people are known dead, the victims of crashing trees or other problems, and all of us have seen our lives changed or at least affected in some way.
In the days and hours that followed, the scope of the storm's damage came into view. Here's more KHU11 coverage of the loss of life and loss of property.
Senator John Tower says President Reagan has now declared Houston and surrounding counties a disaster area. Alicia has moved on, but it is far from over. At least $1 billion lost, 10 known dead, more than 60 are hurting. The bodies of 2 young men, cousins, victims of the force of Hurricane Alicia. Their families don't know how Michael Lopez and Sergio Rodriguez wound up in Hunting Bayou, maybe fell in, maybe blown in.
We borrowed somebody's boat, and I feel that the officer could have borrowed somebody's boat to help us look.
You don't come to understand.
We looked yesterday from about 5 in the evening till dark, and then from sun up till just now.
Their bodies were found by the family today. They were 17 and 21. At the peak of this storm, all that could be seen was unbelievable wind and rain and power. The rain was as thick as a fog. Later, it was all too clear what had happened. Parts of Galveston are simply astonishing. Galveston beach houses exploded like so many toothpicks where the eye of the hurricane passed. Downtown Galveston was heavily damaged, but not nearly so badly. The seawall did what it was supposed to do and held most of the heavy waves out and blocked some of the wind. Still, with no electricity and little water, the National Guard was needed. They were enforcing a curfew and looking for looters. To the north, Baytown was a lot less town and a lot more bay. The subsidence-plagued city has many areas with severe flooding, and even hurricane veterans were shaken by all of this. Literally hundreds of thousands of people are still without electricity. Phone service is intermittent for many, and water problems are bothersome to thousands also. The eye of the hurricane left Galveston and wound up passing directly over downtown Houston. The shiny glass showplace was suddenly shattered as though with buckshot. The police were needed to cordon off parts of the center city. Unprecedented looting. How bad is it all? Well, that answer will take a lot of adding machine tape to decide. It is easily in excess of $1 billion, maybe several times that. And believe it or not, there was, according to the experts, a lot less rain than they expected. As bad as it is today, they say they expected much worse. But regardless, life goes on. The cleanup, fix-up is underway, and for those perhaps most comfortable with this, the men of the sea, it was time to get back to work and catch some of those fish and shrimp blown toward shore by all of this, so that when the rest of us get our power back, we'll have something good to cook. Governor Mark White and Mayor Kathy Whitmire took to the skies today, an aerial tour of the area to assess the damage for themselves. They didn't have to fly very far to begin seeing the destruction the storm left behind. A hangar down at Hobby Airport had no roof, another no wall. Then they flew over downtown Houston. As we said earlier, President Reagan has just declared this a disaster area, which clears the way for additional federal money for victims of the storm. Tonight, there are still hundreds of thousands of folks in the area without power, phones, and water. Gail Jackson updates us now on the progress that's been made to restore utilities.
Houston lighting and power crews have made a lot of progress in the past 2 days. They've succeeded in restoring power to water wells and to this water treatment plant in East Houston. That means that most Houstonians should have water by the end of the day. However, until full pressure is back, officials are still recommending that citizens boil water before drinking it. There's more good news. HL&P crews have cut the number of powerless homes from 750,000 to 250,000. Crews from other power companies around the state have joined in the effort, but it will still take many days to complete the chore. Because of the strike by communication workers, Southwestern Bell is not moving as fast as the power company. So today, Bell appealed to striking employees to help out. Some strikers are now on the job. More than 250,000 homes are without phones because of the storm.
Nobody has ever been faced with this kind of restoration problem, to my knowledge, in the Bell system. With this small a force, with this much of a natural disaster. But not a good time for a strike. Certainly not a good time for a strike and a hurricane.
So despite the fact that some union members are pitching in and other power companies helping out, it could still be a week before phones and power are restored to many homes. So for right now, just plan on cold tuna fish dinners by candlelight with no phone interruptions. Gail Jackson, News Center 11.
Harris County Flood District officials say they were pleasantly surprised at the amount of water left by Alicia. The hurricane dropped 12 inches less water than some predictions, and that difference has saved a lot of homes. Hardest hit areas were the coast, like Baytown, but even low areas in the northwest found the water down by this morning. Rivers and bayous are still full. It is best to stay away from them. A lot of bad currents. Downtown Houston is still a mess after yesterday's storm. Steve Petru says cleaning up downtown will be no easy task.
It has never happened before. The eye of a hurricane passing through downtown Houston. Winds were clocked at 94 miles an hour at the height of the storm. A day later, the full extent of the damage became clearer. The construction worker who was counting windows at the Allied Bank building is missing close to 700 window panes. With each window pane costing about $1,500, the repair price tag at the Interfirst Plaza alone was estimated at $1 million. Some cut themselves while trying to remove the sharp glass. The mountains of glass being swept away will require many truckloads.
It's amazing wind can do this. Blow out all these windows like this.
But wind alone may not have caused all the damage. The construction supervisor told News Center 11 that pebbles and other flying debris from nearby buildings contributed to the destruction. A man who was assessing damage got angry at reporters who tried to ask questions. Dave, record this. The major damage was concentrated in a 6-block area still cordoned off by police.
I think we will have a very extensive analysis of why this occurred, and then we will determine what needs to be done to prevent it in the future.
The mayor says most of downtown Houston should be back in working order by Monday. But the question over what can be done to reduce the vulnerability of these glass towers to future hurricanes may take a lot longer to answer. Steve Petru, News Center 11.
The Kemah Seabrook area is usually a place packed with tourists. That, of course, not the case yesterday. It was high winds and whitecaps out there. Bill Jeffries is standing by live to tell us about the damage. Bill, what can you tell us now?
Well, John, as you know, normally at this time on a Friday, folks would be sitting out here, tourists perhaps, having a drink on a Friday evening, getting set for the weekend. But not on this weekend, not this Friday, because it is a mess in this area. As we look down here, you'll see that Alicia just tore apart many of these bars and restaurants which run through the Kemah area. This is the what you're looking at, mess that it is some of the prime nightlife section of Kemah. Restaurants and shops here tell us that it will be, well, some of them hope to partially reopen within a few days. Others say it'll take weeks and weeks and weeks. Now, I don't know how well you can see off in the distance there, Jimmy Walker's, a famous restaurant. They hope to get the upper section open in just a couple of days, but as far as getting the whole business back to where they want it, they say that could take a month or a month and a half. So in all of the cases with all of these businesses, they're going to lose some money because they're not going to have the lucrative Labor Day business that they're used to. Now, I do quickly want to show you that the boats have returned to this area. Over in this section here, shrimpers who took off when the storm was coming, moving in as inland best as they could. Believe it or not, many of them, most of them even, rode out the storm inside of their boats, we're told, and so that must have been quite a ride indeed for them. Here in Kemah, there is a curfew in effect tonight. They're trying to hold down looting, naturally, with so many of these shops torn apart, John.
Bill, thank you very much, and we hope they get things back in order real soon. There's some of the finest restaurants anywhere down there. Thank you, Bill.
Come Sunday, the biggest issues plaguing Galveston were lack of water and lack of power. Still, reporter Kathleen Phelan shows how some island residents paused to give thanks.
In churches across Galveston, as the shock of Alicia's destruction began to wear off, people gave thanks for the near miracle that no one on the island was killed as she swept ashore.
We are again privileged to experience one of the miracles of the goodness of God. Once again, He has spared us in His love and concern. If we are tempted to complain about our own misery, let's just look around and see how many more miserable people they have here on the island.
With electricity still out, food is spoiling quickly. Residents must wait in long lines in the sweltering heat, then pay cash for ice to keep perishables cool.
Terrible. Absolutely terrible. We have nothing to eat. Yeah. It's bad. We got our electricity at 8 o'clock last night, but our refrigerators aren't making ice fast enough.
Replacing spoiled food is difficult, with shopping markets closed. One place for relief is the Salvation Army, which also supplies badly needed water and other liquids. And for overworked law enforcement, local businesses are supplying food. Mitchell Energy is footing the bill at the Beachcomber. Chef Willie Sosha has served up to 700 police and National Guardsmen daily. But just outside, the world appears to have returned to normal.
There's no TV, no telephone, no nothing to do, so you might as well go to the beach and get a tan.
To help people beat the heat, police are allowing bathing on the in-town beaches, but out west where the damage is worse, there's still concerns.
Main problem is once they start bringing power back on, we're going to have to really watch for down power lines. And the swimmers don't need to be out there because we don't know what kind of obstacles are in the water.
There has already been one victim on the beaches. The body of 19-year-old Henry Collins, missing since yesterday, was dragged in from the water this afternoon. Overlooking the effort to restore services to the island is the statue of Athena that graces the town square, with a motto Galvestonians have had to live by throughout this ordeal. But the main topic of concern today, everywhere you go, is the possibility of another storm.
It'd just be a total disaster. I just really don't know. I hate to even think about it. I'm serious. It scares me.
But the National Weather Service reports there is no immediate danger of any storm, and aside from a few thundershowers in the Gulf, the coast should remain clear and the weather should hold as the city patches up Alicia's damage. Kathleen Phelan, News Center 11, Galveston.
When all was said and done, 21 people were dead. More than 2,000 homes and apartments were destroyed. More than 16,000 were damaged. It was enough devastation for the National Hurricane Center to retire the name Alicia. Though the name wasn't used in the hurricane seasons that followed, the storm survivors remembered that name and what they experienced all too well. Ron Trevino caught up with them in 2008.
Along the beach and on the seawall, there are those who have only heard stories about what happened.
I just heard it was really bad.
By the time we figured out it was coming here, it was too late.
But there are many more who can never forget it.
It blew in on us while we were in the bed. But it was something. It was something different, I can tell you that. I don't want to experience it no more.
Alicia roared through Galveston with punishing gusts over 100 miles an hour, so many years ago. But to those who rode it out on the island, it seems like only yesterday.
And the truck was just bouncing off the ground. The wind was blowing it so hard. And I told the guy I was with, I said, "Ain't no way I'm going to die in this truck."
Bob Schultz was working with the Port Authority, driving around Galveston, helping people out. He drove up on the Galvez Hotel, where the Port Authority had set up operations.
We came around the back of the truck, and we saw a woman rolling down the street with a man chasing her. I could still see it as clear as day. And we stopped her right about here in the street.
While thousands decided to leave and spend the night in shelters, many more stayed, and the island is full of survivors' tales. You can hear them at Sonny's place, where the walls are full of memories, many of them of hurricanes.
When it was in full force, I went to look on the side of the house. It was like a wave hit me because I was totally wet from how strong the wind was blowing.
Most of the people who lived on Galveston's West End did evacuate, and they returned to what looked like a war zone.
You know, you read and hear about this stuff, but unless you actually see what it does, you can't appreciate it.
Mike Mulvihill lost most of what he owned. He's rebuilt, but he worries about the next one.
I think we're prepared, but, you know, we just need to get more prepared.
Many on the island say if a hurricane like Alicia were to hit now, the West End would be more vulnerable than before. A major concern, the erosion caused last year by Tropical Storm Francis. Much of the beach and many of the protective dunes now washed away. So now they're having to create more dunes. With all the development, there's even much more to protect. But Galveston has learned much since Alicia, and a more coordinated emergency plan is now in place. Everyone here realizes it's just a matter of time before they have to use that plan. They just hope it won't be anytime soon. Ron Trevino, 11 Up Close.
Chief Meteorologist David Paul was just a kid when Alicia hit in 1983. Earlier this year, he spoke at the Pasadena Safety Fair and Hurricane Workshop, sharing what his experience was like in spring.
I had a broken leg at the time, and I had a cast on, and there's no AC, and a lot of you are shaking your heads and smiling, so I had my big brother cut it off with a hacksaw. And Mom and Dad, somehow, either they were okay with it or maybe they didn't know. So that's one of the reasons that storm is etched in my brain, but more importantly, I remember the number of trees that came down. And it knocked out power everywhere and trees down on houses.
David also pointed out that Alicia is another example that even in a quiet hurricane season, one storm can do considerable damage. Think about it. Alicia was the first named storm of 1983. That's why it's so important to have a preparedness plan ready during hurricane season, which stretches from June 1st to November 30th. Meteorologist Cheetah Craft broke down what you need to know.
When the first tropical storm watch or warning is issued, it's time to shift your disaster plan into high gear. But there are plenty of things you can do to be prepared before we ever see a storm on the horizon. Jackie Drake with the American Red Cross says now is the time for you to be thinking about your readiness. You want to be ready before you ever see something like this.
From my experience, whenever people come to a shelter, it's usually they weren't expecting that they were going to have to leave home. They didn't prepare. Making a list ahead of time is always so important.
Whether you live on the island or along a bayou in the heart of Houston, everyone needs a plan.
When you are prepared, it makes such a big difference afterward.
Now that you have your plan, I would take your list and actually print it. So that way you can check each box off and make sure you have every item like this. So you have a gallon of water, extra trash bags, paper and extra pens. Think of bringing cash and having that ready at hand, or checks in case power goes out and you're not able to use your credit cards. A flashlight, extra batteries, diapers, wipes, formula if you need it. Then think of either a sleeping bag or extra blankets. Non-perishable foods, so that can be canned goods, bars, anything that you can already pack to have for a good 2-week supply. Medications. People often forget their prescription medications are just something that they take on a daily basis. And now think of making it fun. Bring either games, card games, or books for kids to help pass the time. The key to hurricane season, have a plan, make a list, and be resilient.
That covers you and the 2-legged members of your family, but what about the 4-legged ones? Stephanie Simmons talked to an expert about hurricane plans for your pets.
Just like the hurricane kits we put together for our human family, we also need to prepare for our pets.
Along with your pet, you want to make sure you're taking a pet preparedness kit. Most importantly, you want to make sure you have your pet vaccinated, up to date on its vaccines. If there's a flooding situation, there's standing water, there's just a lot of bacteria that can be easily spread to your pet that could be potentially fatal.
Other essentials include a 2-week supply of food, plastic bowls, a litter box, a bed, toys, and bottled water, which can be hard to find during a natural disaster.
Another thing to remember is have your pet microchipped and then have your pet's microchip registered. That chip is registered with your contact information, so in the instance where you're separated from your pet during a natural disaster and your pet ends up at a shelter, they're able to scan that microchip and contact you.
Make sure to put those microchip papers, vaccine information, and any other records inside a plastic sleeve and seal them inside a plastic container. And if your pet is feeling any anxiety with the unruly weather,
so you want to just make sure you take a blanket as well, keep your pet comfortable. I've seen people use the thunder shirts to put on their pet just to decompress and help them become more relaxed.
During hurricane season, storms can form quickly in the Gulf, so assemble your pet disaster kit now and keep it in your trunk so you and your 4-legged friend are ready to evacuate if needed.
The weather team at the National Hurricane Center developed a new forecasting tool this year. Pat Kavlin explained how it will give you more time to prepare for an upcoming storm.
We first started looking at it because we knew that there was a need. We have emergency managers, other users that want more information out further in time.
The biggest change you can expect to see this year, according to Robbie Berg from the National Hurricane Center, is a 7-day storm outlook instead of the original 5-day.
Our 5-day forecasts have been reliable. So what we wanted to see is if we make 7-day forecasts, would they be just as reliable? And after that 3 or 4 years of testing, we did find that, yes, the 7-day forecasts are reliable. So that gave us enough confidence to be able to put this forecast out publicly beginning this year.
Has there been a discussion of, do we tweak the cone? Do we move to a different model that's more impact-based?
The cone is really meant to be a high-level picture of what the storm may do. We kind of look at it like a headline. If you're reading the newspaper, reading news reports online, you see a headline, but unless you actually go down and look at the story below, you may not get the full picture of what that particular storm may do.
That's because storms can have far-reaching impacts, even outside of that forecast cone. So it's important to know what impact your specific area could face.
The watches and warnings that are issued by the Hurricane Center, by the National Weather Service, they actually mean something. We don't just put them out just to make sure that we cast a wide blanket. We actually are making sure that we're putting it in the right areas in those watches and warnings that really encapsulate the risk from that storm.
Now is the time to make sure you're ready for our next hurricane. Download our KHU11 Hurricane Preparedness Guide by pointing your phone's camera at the QR code on the screen, or you can go to khuu.com/hurricane. The guide is loaded with information, including a list of recommended supplies, maps of evacuation routes, and more. Thanks for joining us for this KHU11 Rewind. I'm Brandy Smith.